We're going to get started today. We have a very special guest. Greg Finkelstein is here from the Pacific Beach Coalition. He's here to tell us a little bit about, can anyone tell us what we're going to be learning about today? Say it out loud if you know it. Yeah, Nudibranchs, yeah. And we're going to be learning about an Earth hero. He's going to be explaining why they're an Earth hero, and we're going to be learning a good bit about them. Just to give you a little bit of background on Pacific Beach Coalition, and I know that Mr. Greg's going to share with us a little bit more soon, is that they are an organization of people that are committed to the same kind of stuff that we are, right? Which is this idea of keeping, of stewarding and caring for our coast and for our oceans. And so they do that through education, like today, through beach cleanups, and also through restoration of habitat, right? Helping to plant native plants and helping to increase biodiversity so that we can have beautiful, beautiful animals and critical species here on the coast. So without anything further, this is Mr. Greg.
Hi everyone, I'm excited to be here today. Thank you. All right, well I have a lot of cool things to talk about today. Every year, Pacific Beach Coalition chooses an animal that we want to highlight and share with the public, give some more information about. And this year, it's Nudibranchs, also called sea slugs. Well, they're a type of sea slug. And we're just going to jump right into it. So, first, just a little background on myself. I went to UC Davis and I studied animal science, animal behavior. And then I went to the University of San Francisco and I got my master's in nonprofit administration, so working with nonprofits. And I brought those things together to become a naturalist for the Pacific Beach Coalition. Now, what a naturalist means, at least for us, is that we learn about the local environment, the native animals, and the non-native animals, and then we share that information with the public. The Pacific Beach Coalition, we do hundreds of beach cleanups per year. You might have been to some of ours, particularly down at Pillar Point. We also do habitat restoration. So we take out invasive, bad plants and we plant native plants. You probably don't realize how many plants around you are actually not supposed to be there. So that's something that we're working on. And finally, we do environmental education. So we come to schools and talk to people like you. All right, jumping right into it. So you guys actually know a little bit about these animals already, and that's so cool. I have a few examples here. These are all local species. There are over 3,000 different species of nudibranchs out there, and like I said, these are just a couple local ones. I know these are local because I took these pictures just a few miles away from here. And by the end of the presentation, I'm going to tell you how you can go out and find them as well. So, I think you guys know a little more than most about nudibranchs already, but I'm still going to say, you might be wondering, are they plants? Are they an animal? What are they? Well, they're an animal, just like you and I. But, more specifically, they're what's called a mollusk. There are lots of types of mollusks out there. Here's some, like the octopus, cuttlefish, and squid are also mollusks. Clams and oysters and scallops are mollusks, and even this nautilus is a type of mollusk. But who are their closest relatives? Well, some that we're really familiar with, like this banana slug over here, and even these painted snails, are all types of mollusks who are very closely related to nudibranchs. Now we also have these guys here. These are other types of sea slugs. They're not nudibranchs. Nudibranchs are just one kind of sea slug. So we've also got sea hares and sea butterflies. So again, just a few more examples of just some pictures that I took just a few miles away from here. Most of these at Pillar Point or Fitzgerald, places you're probably familiar with. Okay, so starting off life. They start off as a super tiny little egg in a structure called an egg mass. Now these egg masses can be very intricate and beautiful in shape and also can be colorful too. They're going to be unique to each species of nudibranch. So if you find an egg mass, you can actually identify the nudibranch that laid it based off its structure. Now when they hatch, again, they're very, very tiny and they start off looking nothing like they do as adults. They actually kind of look more like a garden snail. And they swim through the water. They are one of many animals that make up what we consider to be plankton. So plankton is not one species of animal, but rather it's many kinds of animals of a certain size that are all swimming through the water. So these guys, like I said, they look more like a garden snail at this stage, so they actually have a protective shell that they're going to lose later in life, but they are born with a protective shell around them. And so they will swim around and eat and get bigger, and eventually they will follow chemical signals to the shore, where they will settle down and they will go through something called metamorphosis. Now, you've probably heard of metamorphosis, like when a caterpillar turns into a butterfly. It's when the baby animal significantly changes its form to become an adult. Well, these guys go through metamorphosis, they lose their shell, and they enter their adult form. And then they live for about 1 year, some a little longer, up to 4 years, but most of them live for about 1 year, and then they start the process over again. Okay, so you might be wondering how these guys see. We don't see any eyes on them. Well, they have something called an eye spot, right here, kind of in the forehead area. So this eye spot is really, it's not a very good eye at all. In fact, it doesn't have a lens like us. It's actually underneath a layer of skin. So I want you to try something with me. First, you're gonna close your eyes, and then put your hands over your eyes. And then you can release. Could you tell that it got darker when you put your hands over your eyes? Yeah? Okay, so that's about as well as these guys can see. They can tell the difference between light and dark, and that's just about it. And you might be thinking, that's not really helpful at all. Why do they even have that at all? Well, there's one thing it's really helpful for, and that's if a predator comes right on top of you and casts a shadow, then you will know as the nudibranch, oh man, there's a shadow over me, maybe I need to start defending myself. So if they can't see well, how do they actually get around? How do they find their food and their friends? Well, they have these structures called rhinophores. Just like rhinoceros, rhino means horn, so these kind of look like feathery horns that are on the top of their head. And these horns are actually how they detect chemicals in the water. So it's their sense of taste and of smell. So water will pass through these feathery structures, and they will be able to feel out the chemicals that are in the water, and they will follow them until they get to whatever they're looking for. Okay, and then so how do they move around? Well, most of us walk around on 2 feet. These guys, they just have one big foot that runs the entire length of their body. You can kind of see it here and here a little bit, but also you can see the entire structure. This is the underside of one, and it's actually up at the surface of the water. So nudibranchs do this really cool thing where they can actually come up to the surface of the water, turn themselves upside down, and stick their foot right on the surface of the water, right on the top of the water. And they can actually walk around upside down on the water. Pretty cool, huh? Yeah, pretty interesting. So, how do they eat? Well, they have a mouth just like us, but that's about where the similarities stop. Inside their mouth, they have a structure called a radula. And a radula is kind of like a tongue that has teeth on it. So this is what it looks like, okay? These are all different species and examples of their radula. So if you've ever seen a cat's tongue with the barbs on it, it's very similar to that. It's just that these are microscopic. And they use that to lick and scrape their food, and that's how they eat. Now, speaking of what they eat, what do they actually eat? Well, nudibranchs are predators, which means they eat other animals. Some of these things, like these hydroids and corals, the anemones and bryozoans, they might look like plants, but those are all animals. They're actually types of animals. And sometimes, nudibranchs even eat other nudibranchs. They're not all nice to each other, like this guy right here. Okay, now, there are 2 main types of nudibranchs. Of the 3,000 plus species, you can break them into 2 main categories. And they're either going to be an aelid or a dorid. So let's take a look at the aelids. These are some examples of aelids. and they have the rhinophores in the foot, but they also have these oral tentacles. They're kind of like fingers around their mouth that they'll use to feel around and direct food into their mouth. Then they also have these really interesting spikes on their back called serrata. Now the serrata are actually an extension of their gut, and it's what they use to breathe. And they do one more super cool thing that I'm going to tell you about in just a couple minutes. But first we're going to talk about the dorids. Dorids are the ones who kind of look more like a land slug, maybe a little more familiar. They have the rhinophores for smelling and tasting. They have the foot, but they also have this mantle, which is basically just some thicker skin for a little protection. And then they have these exposed gills in the back. You can see them here and here and here, and that's what they use to breathe. Now, I bet you are all experts at telling the difference between aelids and dorids. They do look kind of different, huh? Yeah. All right, so if they lose their shell when they become an adult, they're tiny, soft, little squishy animals. How do they protect themselves? Well, this is where stuff really gets interesting, okay? It depends on whether they're an aelid or a dorid. So let's look at the aelids first. So the aelids will actually steal stinging cells from their prey. So remember we said that anemones and hydroids, those are all animals. Well, they have what are called stinging cells. This is a microscopic view of a stinging cell. And in this drawing, you can see what's happening here. So it's got a little coiled harpoon, and when it's triggered, it will actually fire off, and right in the tip, in these barbs, there's a little bit of venom in there. If you've ever heard about someone getting stung by like a jellyfish, for example, it's the same structures that they use. They have stinging cells as well. So aelids are not born with the stinging cells, but as they eat creatures that have the stinging cells, they're actually able to store them. They will store them right up in their serrata, right up at the very tips, and they will keep them until they need to use them as their own personal defense. Pretty amazing that this animal is actually stealing body parts of another animal and putting it inside itself as its own defense. I think that's really cool. And then on the other hand, you have dorids. And dorids do not steal the stinging cells. Instead, what they do is they steal the toxins from their prey, the poisons. And they put those toxins into the mucus around their body. So they coat themselves in poisonous slime. And you might have noticed that they're fairly brightly colored. They actually get their color from their food. Like this Hopkins rose gets its color from the rosy rhizoan. And what this is a process where they're not trying to camouflage. They're not trying to blend in. Instead, they're trying to stand out. And they're trying to signal to predators, hey, I'm right here. I'm very visible. I'm not scared of you, and that's because I'm dangerous. I have stinging cells. I have toxic mucus coating my body. You might have heard of some processes like this, like with poison dart frogs being brightly colored. Well, it's the same idea here. Okay, we're about halfway through. I've got a short little video to show you that kind of recaps what we were talking about and gives some really good visuals. And what's super cool about this video is that a lot of times when we watch nature videos, they're from across the world, and that's really neat. But this was filmed right here in the Bay Area, so let's check it out.
This nudibranch is a little thief. It's got no problem with helping itself to its neighbor's stuff. Also called sea slugs, they're basically snails, but without the protective shells. They're soft and squishy, and not exactly speedy. You'd think they'd want to keep a low profile. They're out there, showing off. Because their colors are actually a warning. Some of these nudibranchs have found a devious way to defend themselves. stealing weapons from someone else. See this? It's a hydroid. Friendly little seaweed, maybe? Nope, it's actually an animal related to jellyfish. And it has the sting to prove it. Hydroids have tentacles they use to catch food floating by. They're covered in stingers that pack an excruciating, paralyzing venom. They're called nematocysts. That's them right there. They're the same type of potent weaponry that make jellyfish so dangerous. Mess with them and they explode, shooting out tiny harpoons full of venom, which is why most creatures want nothing to do with them. But nudibranchs are all about it. They devour hydroids. Lots of those nematocysts fire off in the nudibranch's mouth, but it's unfazed. They seem to have a taste for spicy food. Here's the thing though, some of those nematocysts don't detonate right away. They aren't mature enough yet. And that's the key to the nudibranch scheme. It swallows the immature stingers whole, and they travel through the nudibranch's crazy-looking digestive tract, which extends into the spikes on its back, called serrata. See that dark area inside? It's part of the digestive system that connects to the gut. The stingers are collected at the very tip, where they mature, until the nudibranch feels threatened. That's when this colorful little kleptomaniac pulls out the big guns. It points its bristling serrata at its attacker, squirts out the stolen nematocysts, and they explode, launching their venomous harpoons. That's enough to repel just about anyone looking for a quick bite. Just goes to show, if you're not born with certain assets, it doesn't hurt to borrow them.
So pretty interesting stuff there. Now, we're going to talk about where they live so that you can go out and find them yourself. So nudibranchs actually live throughout the entire world, even up in the Arctic and Arctic seas. They can be found along pretty much any coastline. And we, right over here, are actually in one of the hot spots of the world. People come from all over the world to study nudibranchs, not just in California, but I mean right here in Half Moon Bay at Pillar Point Harbor. So if you want to go out and see them, there's a few places you can go. Pretty much any rocky tide pool area along the coast should have nudibranchs. You can go to Pillar Point or Fitzgerald Marine Reserve, and even Lindemar Beach up in Pacifica will have them. So you want to make sure to go at a low tide, and when you're out there, I'm not going to lie to you, it's really hard to find these guys. Sometimes I go out there and I don't see any of them. Sometimes I see 5 or 6. It just really depends. Now they like to hide along the edges of the rocks. Sometimes they'll be in channels or on top or below seaweed or seagrass. So I encourage you to go out there and look for them, but you're going to have to be patient. And the other thing is, if you do go out there, please be respectful of nature. These are really sensitive habitats, okay? They've got a lot of animals and a lot of plant life, and it's really important not to walk on them. But not only that, I would also ask that even if you have rain boots on, that you're not walking through the pools themselves, because when the animals are underwater, they're much more vulnerable. And finally, I would challenge you to think about any of the chemicals you might be bringing out into the tide pools, particularly sunscreen. So if you're going to go out into the ocean or the rivers or the tide pools, I think it's a great idea to wear sunscreen, but please try to use something that's environmentally friendly. Ask your parents, hey, can we get an environmentally friendly sunscreen? Can we get something mineral-based that won't harm the nudibranchs and other sea life? So I've got a few fun facts for you. There are so many species out there, but there's just a couple that I wanted to highlight. And it's okay to get excited, but when I do this, we're gonna quiet down, okay? All right, so I want you to do something with me. Can we all say on 3, who's that nudibranch? 1, 2, 3. Who's that nudibranch? It's a Pikachu nudibranch. Pretty cool, huh? Pretty neat. All right, so there is a nudibranch that was recently discovered that was named after our good friend Pikachu. So there's a nudibranch that was named after a Pokemon. But not only that, there's even Pokemon who are inspired by nudibranchs. Like this guy Shellos over here was inspired by this nudibranch. So it comes full circle. So pretty neat. Now, we have another really cool species to talk about, and it's called a blue glaucus. The blue glaucus, also called blue sea dragon, does something a little different than most other nudibranchs. They actually have air inside their stomach that lets them float up at the surface of the water. And they will do so floating upside down. So we're looking down on this guy, but this is actually its foot. This is actually the underside. Now they eat the Portuguese man of war, who also floats up on the surface of the water, which is definitely not a coincidence. They get their stinging cells and their color from the Portuguese man of war. And I want to introduce you to a concept called counter shading. And so what counter shading is, if you think of an orca or a killer whale, they will be dark on top but light on the bottom. That's because when you're standing over them looking down into the water, it's going to look very dark. So that dark top is going to camouflage really well. But if you're underneath them, you're looking up through the water and into the sky, it's going to be very bright. And for that reason, the underside will be very light in color. So it camouflages if you're looking up. Well, the blue glaucus does the same thing. It's going to be nice dark blue on top, but it's going to be a silvery white color underneath. That way, it's camouflaged in both directions. And then I want to share our friend the leaf sheep sea slug. Now this is a cousin to the nudibranchs. This is a cousin to the nudibranchs, and what they do is something really amazing. They eat algae, and they will keep the parts of the algae, the chloroplast, they'll keep the parts of the algae that allow them to photosynthesize, and they will put them right up here in their cerata, and then these animals, these genuine animals, are actually able to get energy from the sun. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, just like a plant, this animal, I wish I could do that. I wish I could go outside and just charge up. That would be really nice. Okay, so why do we care about these animals? Well, they're beautiful, they're interesting, they have all kinds of cool behaviors, but also they're very important to both science and the ecology. So in terms of science, they have a lot of importance. They are used in medical research, in neurological research, but also they're indicators of changing climates in our oceans. So this species right here, the Hopkins rose, is supposed to be in Southern California. They're not supposed to be up here. They're supposed to be in Southern California where the waters are warmer. But about 10 years ago, they started shifting their range north with the warming waters. And now, scientists will follow their populations and track them to see warming trends in the waters. Also, they can directly affect the ecosystem. And it really depends on which species they are with how they actually do that, because they're all very different from each other. So I'm going to show you another quick little video right here, and this is about a sea hare. So it's not a nudibranch, but it's a very close cousin, and the lessons here are pretty much the same for the nudibranchs. Now, this video was filmed just a couple hours south of here, so again, very close, in an area that was not doing so well, that was really sick. But these guys helped save that area. So let's see how they did it.
This seagrass meadow sways with the tides. Peek closer, and you'll find a humble and hypnotic character. The eelgrass sea hare. It's a kind of sea slug, but looks more like a slice of zebra-striped jello. A sea hare gets its name from its ear-like rhinophores, the two tentacles on top of its head. If you look at them in just the right light, you may even see that bunny resemblance. It uses its rhinophores to sense water movement, temperature, and even smell, like if a potential mate is nearby. To get fresh oxygen, the sea hare pumps water through gills tucked under these foot flaps called parapodia. The eelgrass sea hare lives off the Pacific coast of North America and dwells almost exclusively on, you guessed it, eelgrass. It's a type of marine grass that grows at the edges of oceans. Scientists believe the two evolved together over millions of years. The sea hare grazes constantly, all day, every day. But it doesn't eat the grass. Using its radula, with rows of petal-shaped teeth, the sea hare actually scrapes the grass for the microscopic algae that coats it. Slurping up the algae on the eelgrass lets more sunlight hit the plants, so the meadows can keep growing. Seagrass meadows help control erosion and absorb carbon from the atmosphere. Also, they make some sweet digs for all kinds of creatures. Oh, hello. But like old-growth forests and coral reefs, seagrass ecosystems are rapidly disappearing. So were the eelgrass meadows of this wetland, Elkhorn Slough. For decades, fertilizers from farms drained into the water, overfeeding the algae. Massive algal blooms blocked the sunlight from reaching the grasses. And there was another problem. Sea otters were missing. We hunted them for their fur, almost to extinction. The whole system was out of whack. The grasses started to die. But in the 1980s, scientists reintroduced sea otters here, and things improved. That's because sea otters eat the crabs that eat the sea hares. Fewer hungry crabs means these slug bunnies are back in business. Once again eating algae so this eelgrass can flourish, even with extreme algal blooms. This is called a trophic cascade, when a top predator like an otter helps to keep an ecosystem in balance. A healthy eelgrass meadow also means a haven for the sea hare's eggs and protection for its young. The next generation of this habitat's tiny, slimy stewards.
Okay, so we're almost done here, and you guys have been great. Now, just a couple important things to talk about, like number one, how can we help them? Well, there are a few things that you can do. You can think about the kinds of chemicals that are entering the environment. So, like I said before, wearing sunscreen that's environmentally friendly and using soaps that are environmentally friendly, particularly if you're outside washing a car or something like that, are really important. Also, when we go to the tide pools, which you should definitely do, when we go there, we want to be respectful. We want to stay out of the water. We want to look, not touch. And finally, I want to remind you that no matter what you end up doing in life, you don't have to be a biologist or a naturalist. No matter what you do, with your unique set of skills, you can do amazing things for the environment if you care about it enough. And just like our good friend Karen here made this beautiful artwork for us that we use to help explain to others and get them committed to helping Nudibranchs. So whatever you end up doing in life, if you want to help the environment, you absolutely can. You can come join us, the Pacific Beach Coalition, for a cleanup, We'd love to see you out there. We have a site right at Pillar Point, and we're there all the time. And we will definitely be out there on Earth Day, so please do come out and join us. And finally, when you're a little older, you can consider becoming a junior site captain or a junior naturalist, so you can help lead groups and get leadership experience, helping us help others to help the environment, okay? So I want to do one more thing with you all before we leave, and that is to take the Earth Hero Pledge, because I bet all of you want to do good things for the environment, and so we're going to take a little pledge together that just says we're committed to doing good things for the world, okay? Everyone ready? We're going to put our hand up, we're going to be nice and loud, and here we go. I pledge to do my part. To keep our oceans and beaches free from trash. I will pick up litter. I will throw garbage away properly. I will recycle and compost. And use less plastic. I pledge to learn more about Nudibranchs. And to advocate against climate change. I will show respect for nature. And all living things. And use my voice. To speak up for the earth and oceans. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. It's been great to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Greg, for this. And we promise that we, as Seacrest students, one of our greatest missions is that we will leave it better than we found that. So when we think about this and we're taking this pledge, we promise to take care of our environment and that we will be active stewards of our coastside here. Today we are going to get back to our learning celebrations, and so we're going to be dismissing you. Before we go, know that each of you, if you are in the lower secondary school, you guys will be taking these home. You have a bookmark here that Greg has given us from Pacific Beach Coalition, and they have the pledge on there. So share these, maybe even put them in a spot on your refrigerator or someplace that you can look at those. Also, you have little buttons and stickers that you can put onto a water bottle. Okay, so if you are, we're going to get you guys going because I know you have a lot to share with your buddies. So if you are in junior kindergarten or in 8th grade, you guys may go back to your classroom. Just share together.